Hi all, our next instructive game today will have the theme of the king that escaped. To demonstrate this theme I'm going to choose one of my British Championship games in round 3 where I was paired against Stephen Berry, who was an FM rated 2363. So playing black, I'd noticed before the game in my preparations that he played the advanced variation of the French defence, and I prepared a line from Watson's Dangerous Weapons book. So this interesting line features the knight played to h6, the Leap of Faith chapter, if you ever get that book. So the advanced variation. So after c3 I played knight c6, and after knight f3 I used this idea from Watson's book, knight h6. So it's a very interesting idea to allow double pawns, but if bishop takes, then the bishop can come to g7 and support f6 later. So it's not all bad, but it is a little bit controversial. After bishop d3, he's not really committing to the most dangerous lines. He's letting me play f6, and after castles, he's letting me tuck that knight on f7. So the knight's quite useful there, putting a bit of pressure on e5, and also, as we'll see, supporting the aggressive g5 later. So after rook e1, I actually play g5 immediately. I think, why not? Because tactically I'm not getting blown apart. I know my king's in the centre, but how can he exploit that in this particular position? He actually took on f6, which I didn't mind, because now my bishop can potentially go to d6. Nice attacking diagonal against his king. And now he plays knight a3. So potentially he's trying to exploit my king in the centre with knight b5. And I don't really want to play a move like c4 and bishop takes a3. I think I didn't really like losing this dark squared bishop. So what I did instead was just play bishop d7 to be able to answer something like knight b5 with castled queenside. I was also a bit wary, maybe he's got a positional idea of a combination of dc and followed by knight b5 to d4. So I'm a bit wary about both of these squares as well as this knight b5 threat. So bishop e3 was played. So he's intensifying the pressure on c5. And here I played the aggressive move g4. So still with my king in the centre, I'm really just going for the attack. After knight d2, I decided here, should I castle and use a pawn sack, or should I just play c takes d4? I thought c takes d4 was best to give him a target on d4, and now I played h5. So potentially I'm going to castle queenside and just use my pawns as a battering ram for his king later with h4 and g3. That was the plan. After knight b3 I played bishop b4 here, gaining in tempo for the rooks to be connected when I castle queenside now. So I castle queenside, and it's nice always to connect your rooks. So now I'm threatening, now in some variations, just rook g8, h4 and g3. After rook c1, I thought I'd better secure my position a bit more, although I was getting a bit wary about his knight c5 ideas. I played king b8, and he plays now knight b5. So potentially that knight's going to reroute to c3, but also he's going to evict my bishop now with a3. He's just unblockaded his a pawn. Now here is the moment where I dare to play e5, daring to give myself the isolated d pawn. Because as I remember in my past French defence games, often this is a thematic thrust in the centre, and you have to accept sometimes the isolated d pawn in order to gain some pressure on the white king. So after d takes, knight f takes e5, he didn't play anything too sharp here. He actually just played knight 3 to d4. I think objectively he's in a better position here. And he started to go wrong. After knight takes d4, Rybka thinks bishop takes d4 is good, and he actually played knight takes d4, which actually is a very useful move. But after bishop d6, bishop e2, I have got some menacing, caveman type threats here. Rook g8, h4 and g3, or rook g8, knight f3. There's some menacing threats here. He actually, after this rook move, played move f4, which actually is possibly a very, very good move, but it wasn't continued very well. After g takes f3, it seems the engine's like knight takes f3 here, not bishop takes f3. Let's have a quick look. Knight takes f3, And now, how does black continue this attack? Because, you know, say we attack g2 with the queen, then just knight h4 is adequate, or even g3. But knight h4 is a possible defensive idea. And not only that, you know, with the knight retreating here, this queen d4 is going to be a dangerous threat on my a7 vulnerability. So, you know, knight takes f3 seems a lot stronger than the game continuation. And in the game continuation, he plays bishop takes f3. And we'll notice here we've got an unprotected piece, which seems to be a theme of many of my missed opportunities in this tournament. So, you know, one question, how do we mine the resources based on the unprotected piece? Because piece weaknesses in the opponent's position, you know, whether an overloaded piece, a pinned piece, a loose piece, they always, you know, they often provide tactical resources. So you simply need to mine those clues in the position, you know, and I didn't really mine it to its full extent. I thought the best way of exploiting that unprotected bishop on e3 was knight g4, but there's another way which the computer thinks is a lot more accurate, which knight c4 here. But the critical resource here is, you know, say white did passively just move the bishop back there. Now here queen e5. So it seems in this game, with this isolated pawn, there's opportunities for both sides. As we saw in the other variation, the white queen could have come to d4, and we see in this variation, the black queen can come to e5. And so that's quite a peculiar feature of this kind of position, that those actually can provide the best attacking resources, the central queen squares. So white's queen to d4, black's to e5. So I committed myself to an attack which unfortunately exchanged off too many pieces, and the king really escaped in a dramatic fashion, such that the game actually won one of the game prizes of the day, the third best game prize. So after bishop takes g4, I'd calculated bishop takes h2, and after takes hg4, and now we see I thought this was going to be really good because I've still got quite a dangerous attack, but he played a check and now played rook c3. So he's going to answer my g3 by sacrificing a piece. So I played g3 and he sacked a piece, and theoretically I'm better here, but it is a simplified position, and I was hoping he was going to play for a back row cheapo, which wouldn't have worked. I was hoping here he played king e2, where I can then play queen takes d4, and queen f8 could be answered by bishop c8, because my queen is protecting the rook. I mean, this was all in time trouble now, up to move 40. But actually he played the brave king e3, and I checked him, and king d3, and now I thought, oh my god, this knight is going to be a strong piece. If his king escapes tucked away to b1, this knight's going to be strong. So I thought this might be a useful idea, this bishop b5, just to get rid of that knight, to try and discourage him carrying on in his travel. So he has to take because of the skewer against his rook. And now I play queen c4 check, and after king d2, queen takes b5. But unfortunately, his king's still escaping. After king c1 check, king b1, rook c8, he plays just simply a3, and my attack has dwindled down. So really, after check d4, I was surprised actually he didn't try and grind me down now for the next few hours, because of his higher rating by more than 100 points. After d4, rook d1, queen c5, after the draw, and thankfully he accepted. So I wasn't in for a long period of torture now. You know, I thought I had a very dangerous attack, and the critical position was when he had that unprotected bishop on e3. Let's have a quick overview and summary with a special note on that position. So I used a dangerous weapon from Watson's French defence book, and it worked out very well. I had an aggressive position in the opening. He hadn't had this in many of his other advanced French games, so I was very pleased with this opening position. It was just in my style to have attacking opportunity. Castling queenside secured my king a little bit, but this was very interesting how the central squares here could be used. Once the isolated pawn was created, these central squares provided very critical variations. So bishop d6, So after f4, g takes. So I really should have considered a lot more carefully knight c4. I went in for this more spectacular knight g4. But here I thought I'd have a lot of pressure though. And I calculated actually if he didn't take that bishop, he would have had it with this queen sack. This is one of the spectacular lines where queen h4 here. In fact, I was looking at the queen sack for a long time with h takes g, but this doesn't happen. He gobbled my bishop and let me get this seemingly very aggressive position with g3 coming up, but he sacrificed the piece to dissolve the attack. Basically, my attacking pieces were coming off, leaving this simplified queen and rook versus queen and rook position, which thankfully, he accepted the draw. So another very exciting game from the championship. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave any comments on YouTube. Thanks very much.